Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here with you for another Australian Survivor check-in here at the end of week 40 here for Australian Survivor. And of course, we're very excited to have here with us once again. She's celebrating a big birthday this week. And of course, she's celebrating another amazing week of Australian Survivor. It's our chief international Survivor correspondent. It's Shannon Guss. Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Rob. Is that viral sensation Rob Cesternino, who went wildfire on the internet? Kim Kardashian levels of internet breaking.
Still got it. Yep.
Yeah, when Rob Cesternino says that Australian Survivor is better than US Survivor in every way, it turns out people listen.
Unobjectively.
And people watch. Yeah.
Stand by it. Yep.
It's crazy that went far, and that was getting comments. That was it's great for the franchise. Thank you, Rob.
Put me in the hot takeoff for 2023 because we're ready to go.
Massive.
Okay. All right. And of course, we are very excited to be back together with this man for the first time since we did the longest Rob as a Podcast episode in history. The last time we talked about heroes and villains, please welcome Chappell.
Hey, I honestly didn't make that connection, but now it just makes sense for me to be here this particular week. We had a great 6-hour podcast between the three of us.
It was 7
hours.
6 hours 40 or so.
Yeah. Last time the three of us talked about Samoa and
the runtime of 1 week of Australian Survivor. That's how long it was. Yes.
About how much content I've done on this week so far.
Yeah. So I'm happy to be here because I feel like this is kind of my wheelhouse. Let's talk about these heroes and villains.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So here we are. Shannon, is this like the halfway point of Australian Survivor?
Yeah. So, I mean, in content, yes. 12 episodes down. We did it, Joe. We did 12 episodes. But it'll probably be longer in weeks because at a point they usually start, I don't think they are next week, but they usually start going down to 2 a week. So it probably won't be 8 weeks. It has been, I think, before, but it's usually like 9 or 10. So that's what we're preparing for.
Okay, of course.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say that, this is just a check-in with Shannon Guss. You could check out almost 4 hours with Shannon Guss and my friend, Chappell's enemy, Omer Zahir. They went through everything. I got to say, this is not going to be like that podcast because I listened to you both throughout most of the day today. And you two are too smart to be together on a podcast because you two are back and forth. It's a 3-3-2. No, it's a 5-3-1. 2-2-2. My head was spinning.
Well, I don't know what's hard to understand. They could have been 2 votes on Sam, 2 votes on Simon, 2 votes on Liz, 2 votes on Jordy. They flush the idols. We go back to 2-2. We sacrifice Simon. What's so difficult?
Yeah, you two don't miss
fun
a beat.
Though, right? Well, that's a fun one. That's a fun iteration. I mean, that's what I love to do is really think through like all the intricacies of all the plans for all the people. And I feel like we've had so much of that in Australian Survivor, so I'm really enjoying it. We don't have to go through the 2-2-2-2s today, if you don't want to. But we had a good time. So it's all different. That recap podcast, we go through all the intricacies. This podcast, you both say something viral worthy. Chappell has promised that he's going to say something that's going to go viral on the Survivor Reddit. And he's going to think about it, and he's going to get hundreds of comments. So if he doesn't say it by the time this podcast is done, then he's not getting invited back ever.
Damn. I mean, that's fair. Honestly, that's fair. Shannon has been gatekeeping the entire continent / country of Australia.
I invited you to stay at my home.
I'm just talking about my coverage of the country at large, not so much Survivor, but just in general. I just can't touch Australian stuff. So I was very shocked that Shannon gave me this phone call. Phone call. The message got to me that I was going to be joining us for this conversation. So maybe I'll come up with something viral just for the occasion.
Good.
Okay. Well, it was another great week here on Australian Survivor. This is the season that keeps on hitting. I mean, I feel like that we don't even get like dud episodes. That it's been just hit after hit after hit. Probably, I don't even know if you could rank the episodes, but I think that maybe the Jordy Tribal Council probably the highlight of this week.
Yeah, I think that might be my favorite episode of the season. Between that and obviously the George Tribal Council, but like I just love that episode so much. It was just like a visceral experience. Chappell, because you got into it because of the George Tribal Council, right? You heard about it and you're like, all right, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And has it delivered?
Oh yes, yeah, 100%. I like. We don't have to talk about. I mean, y'all have talked about that tribal council, and I listened to all the coverage, so I've spent the
Aw,
hours with y'all as well. You and Nick did a great job. And so like, yeah,
thank you.
that episode was just buzzing on the internet. Everybody kept saying one of the best episodes of any iteration of Survivor ever. It's like, okay, Rob, calm down. So I went and checked it out, and I had nothing. I was like, I've watched so much reality TV, and that was in a league of its own. So I agree, it was amazing. And then, like you said, the Jordy episode not too far after was good as well. Um, you know, God not liking Paige. What else can you
Mhm.
what else could you ask for? These last
It's
few
great stuff.
episodes have been just, that have been outstanding. I do wonder if you have as many good episodes if you didn't have 45 episodes a season. I also didn't realize we were only at the halfway point and these people have not merged yet.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
stopped cursing for Lent. Like it was a personal decision, but I almost said some expletives when I realized that there was still 14 more weeks of this show left.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's 24 episodes.
That's incredible. That's insane, but also incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the Jordy Tribal Council to start things off because I feel like it was so interesting. This bold play that was made at this Tribal Council where him and Liz come in and they got the idols and they, really tried. It's such a great Survivor story of like he tried to have his cake and eat it too, and
Cookies, yeah.
ultimately, have his
Yeah.
cookies and eat it too. And ultimately, that was not going to happen for Jordy.
I've never been more embarrassed for somebody in my I won't say not in my life, but I was screaming internally, what are you doing? Play it. You like, what's wrong with you? Like, oh my God. I hate watching people not play the idol, but what I hate even more is when you're sitting there with the idol knowing you're going home and you haven't just reached over and handed it to someone. Like I feel like the moment you knew you weren't going to play it, you have to give it away. You have to say, here, hold this. I'm not going to play it, but also I don't want to get voted out with this because then you can't have it. Nick asked a good question about people who don't play idols. Remember, I think the question was, what about me when you get voted out? And I was like, yeah, exactly. What about me? You doing this grand play where you keep your idol and you have your cake and your cookies and eat it too. But damn, when it don't work, slide me that thing. What are you doing? I don't know. I don't know if it's outside the rules or something like that. Dang, I've just been cussing. I don't know if it's outside the rules or something like that. But I just feel like at some point you have to just drop it on the floor and let her pick it up. At this point they knew you have the idols. Just give it away.
Well, the rule in the US, what has always been the rule is once the votes start being read and your name starts coming out, like you can't pass the idol. And that was not the case in Australian Survivor. So people were very confused because a couple of seasons ago, someone got voted out with the idol in their pocket and passed it as they were hugging people out the door, which was upsetting because it was a terrible rule. So much so that they changed
wild.
the rule.
I didn't know. I didn't know that. I heard you talking about on the podcast with Omer about how if you leave the idol back at camp, that's a distinction that I did not know that rule. That
if
you
leave it out of your possession, like hidden.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you bury it in the camp in US Survivor, that idol is dead. But in Australian Survivor, correct? That the idol is still alive. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it used to be that you could literally pass on. It actually happened in Survivor South Africa as well in the same week that people did that. And it would just happen to happen. And there was an outcry because what's the point of voting someone out with an idol to flush an idol if they can pass it? So that's been taken away. And then I think in terms of like giving it to Liz before, just in case, they didn't know who the target would be. I mean, I know Omer and I spoke about like it could have gone either way for us between Liz and Jordy. So I think it's really tough there. I think it's tough for one to play their idol. I don't think one really stands out as a primary target above the other. Jordy's more like the alpha in that dynamic, but Liz has more of the connection. So that's a hard one to do. But they could have buried it at camp if they were never going to play it in the face of all whispering that clearly they were obviously never going to play it. So it's something that they probably could have thought to do. But I love the almost nature of it as you're discussing. Like there was a similar episode in Return of the Outcast in Survivor South Africa recently where there was a plan, like they almost got there and then like they did so much work to get there. It was so impressive. And at the last moment, it like just failed. And almost like how desperately sad that is and how close you get is almost more entertaining to me than something actually coming off and winning because of the complexity. So yeah, I thought that was a great element of it as well.
So I don't want to be results oriented about this. Okay. But Was this the right play for them to make to try to get through this tribal council without using their idols? Because I feel like that we've talked about this a little bit where, okay, you could play more conservative, but you do, if you want to actually like take control of the tribe, like you need to be making sort of like these risky moves. If they both just played their idol here at this tribal council, does that change anything at the next tribal council? Would one of them still be going home at the next tribal council, even if they did? So it's not a total disaster to try to get through this tribal council without playing the idols.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Shannon has worked this out in like with like where do people go next? But it for me, it's so early in the season. You know, like this isn't even the merge. You got plenty of time to find more. People are literally just giving people idols at challenges. They're like, here, I found this at my camp. Do you want one? You never know
Love
what's
it.
gonna
Yeah.
happen. You know, so I feel like you gotta use it to survive, especially if you know you're getting votes. Like these people knew at least a vote was gonna come their way. I just don't. I never understand that. If you know you're getting voted for, even a little bit, you have to really be considering using that idol. Because in the past, I think the most egregious example of this I can think of is Chris Noble. Right? He does this whole like scavenger hunt for the idol, leaves the island, all this other stuff. When they're doing the voting, he hears Dominic yell his name from the other, like, I'm voting for Chris. And Chris is like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna play my idol.
And it was a
What do you
timed
mean?
idol. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And you only had it for 2 weeks. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? Go play that thing. So I don't know. I think they should play it regardless.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I think that it's the numbers. They're not at a, you know, if they have Simon, it's a 3-5, and then they can't, the other side can't split. Sure, but I mean, trusting that Simon's with you, I think would be wrong, especially given the whispering, but especially given everything with Simon. So you have to assume you're a 6-2. That's so many numbers. Like even if the other side are doing something against something else, like a Sam as an example, like they can still put votes on you, which they do. Like I think to even try to keep the idols for me was the wrong goal and intention, and it was their intention. The intention should have been use the idols but still gain forward. And I think that with using the idols, this plan could have done that. You don't want to just go and use the idols and take out someone, they come back as a united 5 against you. You want to create fractures, and they did. But they didn't survive. Jordy didn't survive for that. So I think it was, when I look at the plan, I liked so much of it, but it was all with the wrong intention. It was all about bringing people on by holding a gun to their head. It was all about not using their idols when numerically that it was just way too risky. And given like they're right before a merge, well, they're not. They're after a post swap, but they're probably going to win challenges, some challenges at least. And again, as we're saying, they could find more idols. Like they could be in a good spot. There hasn't been an elimination this tribe has gone to since. Maybe there won't be until a merge. So if they just get through that one, they might never have to worry about it again. That's even throw to go to this tribal council. So
Right. And to your point, this is the stacked challenge group, right?
Yeah.
These are the
Supervillains.
muscle people. You know, we talked about how physical you have to be in Australian Survivor. Well, here are the physical people all being like, yeah, but what if we don't make it to the next round? What are you talking about? Like, play the idol, go win the next couple challenges and see what happens. It doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, I think they just had the wrong plan. They wanted to like, oh, my goal is to go in here and come out with my idol. That was the goal for them. And I really think the goal should have been, oh, we need to like divide this group however we can. And they never should have thought Simon was with them. There is not one indicator they should have said Simon is with us. You just screwed him over. Both of y'all just got caught screwing him over in the most elaborate tribal council that any iteration of worldwide Survivor has ever seen. And you're like, he'll probably work with us next week. No, he won't. Stop it.
Yeah.
Get out of my face.
And but also they even knew from the get-go that regardless of the screwing over, like Simon was gonna go to the beefy guys. Like he has love heart emoji eyes for Sean. So even within that, that's the risk that he's gonna go and try be with the alphas, as he should. Like, why would he stick with you? You just turned on him.
So, okay, we know that Sam is, even though to his credit, as you documented this week, Shannon, Sam didn't get mad that people wrote his name down at this tribal council. But I was thinking that what if for Jordy and for Liz, like, okay, if they convince Nina and Haley to write Sam's name down, but then they didn't write Sam's name down. So they played their idols. And then ultimately, like, I think your ideal scenario is if you're thinking like George, you want Sam coming back to that camp. You want somebody, a different number going out, and you want Sam coming back to that camp knowing that other people in his alliance wrote his name down.
That would go to the revote. Sorry to go to the 2-2s again, but then assuming that but then they would have to play the idol. So that's again, they don't want to play the idol. Like they can do that. And people said as well, they could leave it to tribal council and then just put 2 votes, like different votes on people, like everyone thought the 3 amigos should have done. So then say they put 2 votes on Sean and then they've played their idols. So it's a 2-2, and then everyone has to decide between Sam and Sean. Like Sam could still go. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be done in that. They're trying to bring over their allies. So they're trying not to screw over Nina and Haley. They want to like work with Nina and Haley despite the hostage situation. So it probably speaks to the wrong intention. But it's interesting you say like, what would George do? George would play his idol. Like there was so much discussion last week. Like, should George play the idol even when he didn't get enough votes? Out of using it as a tool, which this would be like an offensive tool to make sure, a defensive tool to make sure you get through, an offensive tool to fracture people, which it would be, which is what George did. So I think when we think like WWGD, what would George do? He would create the cracks while expending an idol on that division. And that's not what they did. So that's an interesting distinction, I think, given how much the conversation last week was around George playing the idol and now so much is about them not playing the idols.
Yeah. Shannon, did this come up at all during the week that I felt like, okay, here we are in this heroes versus villains season, and you have Jordy who ultimately goes out of this game. He could have potentially saved himself. This to me reminded me of Tyson in the original U.S. heroes versus villains. Has that comparison been made?
I think I've seen tweets. I don't know. There's so many words happening all around, Rob. I think that's great. Like it's a tragic pre-merge.
Big player, big personality,
player,
around the same time in the game.
I love it. And a massive unforced error where you're like, you did that to yourself. Why?
And he had such a great exit. He's like, oh, I pulled a Simon.
Yeah, I've done a Simon. I love that. Can we find more parallels to, because obviously like idols are being passed all around. So you got the JT of it all, which I quite love.
Yes. Well, I think there is something to this format, and I think it speaks to that the U.S. season should definitely come back and do the heroes versus villains, because when you put these hats on people of you're a hero, you're a villain, it really forces people into, oh, I've got to be doing things heroically. I've got to be doing things villainously. And there's something that seems to be about this theme that is really like trying to get people to pass these idols back and forth. And it's so much like a shared DNA between these two seasons. Chappell, I love all of the idols getting passed back and forth.
I do too. I just really wish that that's something we could incorporate into what you say is the less superior, the inferior, if you will, version of Survivor, the U.S. Survivor. Because the idea that is like, oh no, I'm just going to take my idol, and even if it's not an idol, it might just be an idol clue. Who knows? But I'm going to give it to whoever that is over there, and I'm going to do it in the middle of the challenge, and then they're going to go and take it back, and then they're going to tell everybody I just did that, and then they're not going to play it, and it's like, what are all these levels?
Can I just say, in fairness to the U.S. Survivor, which I did say is, it's not a great comparison to Australian Survivor right now. I do feel like that in the knowledge is power era, like I think that they did create a mechanism that is forcing that to happen quite a bit. Now, I think it is happening like with more like a randomness and more haphazardly because people just don't know when the lightning bolt is going to come out of the sky and steal their stuff. But it is like similarly happening as we saw like in Survivor 43, quite a bit of advantage passing.
Yeah. I mean, in the previous seasons, I don't think we really heard a lot about the advantage passing with the knowledge and power. But this most recent one, 43, every time you talk to somebody, like, I don't know where my idol was at that point. I just had to give it to somebody because the knowledge is power. And it's kind of annoying because from the television perspective, we're like, why didn't you just ask for it back? Or why didn't you have it at this time? Or why does this person even have your idol? Why would you give it to them? But it makes sense for them if they think that there's like this looming presence of knowledge is power. Here, there's no looming presence and they're still doing it. It really might have something to do with these titles. Like you said, heroes versus villains, David versus Goliath, where there's just like opposites, right? There's no opposites between brains, beauty, and brawn, whatever. But to say that you are this team, to say that you are this team and you are this team and y'all are just in general against each other, just based off of just because we placed you against each other. You're like, I kind of hate them too, and it makes you go above and beyond to protect your people, I guess.
Yeah. But what's interesting about that, and not to make this whole check-in always the AU versus US podcast, but it's I think coming from two really big things that.
let's do it.
That the US doesn't have, which is firstly, again, themes at the moment, and it's that big duality theme, which are all taken from the US,
Right.
and now the US isn't doing. So you first have that identity theme, but then you have a swap. And I know we talked about it. US doesn't do the swaps anymore, and every bit of intrigue here comes out of throwing a challenge to save your people, passing an idol, because you're separated from each other. In the US, we did see like we obviously see tribes trying to help each other, but it's through like little things like, I guess, looking at each other on the mat, or these little afternoon treks, like trying to get as much connection as you can to someone on the other side, but they kept so separate compared to like all the intermixing here through one swap. And I think playing out the way it is really showing how much the US is missing in that cross connection.
Shannon, absolutely. You know, we did a podcast like in between season 40 and like it was right after season 40 about like, okay, well, you know, Survivor has a chance to reset and do all these things, and they made a lot of changes, and they locked into these changes, and I don't know if they were necessarily like the right things that they locked into, because a lot of the things that we are really enjoying in this Australian Survivor season are things that the U.S. Survivor has completely gone against. You mentioned the swap, and the swap is leading to a lot of discussion of throwing challenges. And I feel like that the U.S. Survivor, now famously in Survivor 41, the Luvu tribe did attempt to throw a challenge,
out of boredom, mostly.
And it was like, and the story was, we're trying to throw the challenge, and Nasir is made us win the challenge. But Australian Survivor does not shy away from showing players throwing the challenge, and US Survivor does. There have been instances in the last 5 years, 10 years, people throw challenges, and the US Survivor doesn't give us that storyline for whatever reason. I think they feel like, oh, the viewers aren't going to like it if we show people trying to throw a challenge, especially if it works. And Australian Survivor does not shy away from telling us that.
Which is so interesting, because I think so much of the casual audience of Australia, particularly, like all casual audiences, but definitely with Australia, with the epic challenges we have, are watching for the challenges. And the fact that they would really be like, we're selling out our own challenges to show that people are throwing it. Like some casuals, I'm sure many are very, very angry about that. And that's not what they want to see. That's what people saying that they were. Yeah, they're fast forwarding through the challenges now because they're being thrown. For me, that's the most interesting thing. Strategize at the challenges, please. Like that gives me the intrigue. As I said, I can no longer skip past the challenges, which has been really difficult for my workload. But that's what I enjoy way more. So it's interesting that Australian Survivor is like, we're going all in all strategy here above the physicality, which has always been like such a huge draw card for them. Rob, I wanted to ask you, as someone who's obviously been on US Survivor multiple times and knows so much about it, do you
go on
this which you were is this connection, this like kind of cross-tribe communication, is this allowed in US Survivor to the same extent? Because Matt Chat's a huge part of Australian Survivor, and obviously we have it in the US as well. But Jonathan will ask really pointed questions. That's always been a thing where he'll kind of out things. Like, it was a crazy tribal last night. And there's always been more of that agenda given. Do you feel like this can happen at the US all the time? They can sit there literally giving strategies to each other if they want to in the challenge on the mat, but people just don't because it's up to the cast, or is it more like in the format?
That's interesting. I think that if somebody wanted to do it, I think it probably would be allowed. But I just think that, Jeff is so much more of like a commanding presence at the challenges of like, okay, he's running the show. He's doing this. Okay, you will speak when you are addressed. Okay, let me ask you a question. And I feel like that when they get together, it seems like it's a little bit more of a fun hang for the tribes when they get together on Australian Survivor. And another thing also is that after the challenges, there's so much more commingling that happens among the tribes in Australian Survivor. And for whatever reason, you don't see that in Australian Survivor. Maybe not since Matt Elrod tried to shake the hand of the other team in Redemption Island and they got voted out for it. You never see the tribes like hugging after the challenge. And I feel like that happens after every single challenge and creates a lot of opportunities for things to get passed between the tribes and information.
All right, let's just call it what it is. The people over at Australian Survivor, they went back and they watched the U.S. season, and they said, what made the U.S. season so compelling? What are the moments that we got that made people want to watch this show? And it is the hugging on the mat and slipping somebody your idol note. It it is very much the tribe swaps that leave somebody screwed, and and that people have to work their way out of. It's very much idle play, correct or incorrect. Like, these are the things that make people want to watch the show, and Australian Survivor has thrown them all into one season. They even do the challenges that we like from past seasons. Like, you don't see those challenges anymore. And so on Australian Survivor, like, they're going backwards. They're going back to the well that helped U.S. Survivor become what it is, even the heroes versus villains format. U.S. Survivor's like, we're not doing these formats. We're not doing these labels. We're just going to stick in one place. Australian Survivor said, nah, people liked when we went to Samoa. People liked all that stuff. Let's go do that. And you would think it would be a very simple thing to do, is to just take it back to the things that worked. But U.S. Survivor's in a different mode right now. They've said, been there, done that. But for Australian Survivor, I think that's very much the thing that made U.S. Survivor work. Because even the auction popped up, y'all. Yeah, the auction.
We always do.
Famous auctions.
We always do. And right. As well, like, I mean, we have to swap because our pre-merge is like, 50 it's going to be 50 exactly. So it would be very boring. Even like people said, maybe we won't swap kind of in reverence to the original heroes versus villains, but we can't sit here for over 12 episodes just getting down to 0 people on the villains tribe probably. But I think as well, it's kind of like US Survivor is like the cool older brother, and Australian Survivor looks up to US Survivor and is like, remember when you did that? I want to do that. I'm wearing your old clothes. Like, I really look up to you. And US Survivor's like, I'm way past that. Like they have the reverence for the old classic challenges, for the formatting, for the themes that they've taken. And I think that is playing out because we love those things about old school US Survivor.
Yeah. Well, Shannon, there's so much great stuff in these Australian Survivor seasons. I would love to hear like more about what goes into the making of one of these seasons. Is there any chance that maybe, this is a little outside the box, could JLP maybe podcast weekly and talk about
don't cover
something, not a recap podcast.
Your bit's being taken.
Something maybe, but no, it's not a recap, but something cooler.
Cooler.
Yeah.
Who would do
and
that?
Get into all of the like production decisions.
Yeah, I mean, well, JLP famously is like not a producer. He's got like notes for the show that they like don't want to take. But I think JLP is an interesting, because people have always said about JLP, like he gives too much, and he has in the past like really given away like secrets on the mat, and I think it's been refined a bit. But it's all the issues we've had with Jeff. Almost has a purity that I actually think is quite nice from a game sense. He's so impartial, but that's the reason we get like, you're a surfer, tell us about it, how this is like the ocean. Versus JLP's like, he's here to like blow things up, like he will ask like pointed questions that you have to answer at tribal or on the mat in like dramatic ways, and the cast is certainly running with it. It's mostly on them, but I think we have to acknowledge JLP's role in that.
One of the things that JLP did this week, I thought that was so interesting, with going back to, and we got so much wonderful content out of the Cookie Idol this season. And I don't know if in their wildest dreams, if they could have thought like, oh, this is a clue, but really, what if somebody thinks it's an idol? It all just went, it was so delicious.
Why did he kiss it? Why did he kiss the cookie that came out of his ass?
His butt? Yeah.
Yeah. Why did he kiss it? I can't get past it. I can't unsee that.
That's the issue.
It happened in slow motion. It was just like,
but it wasn't like in his butt, right?
We don't yuck anybody's yum around here, Chappell.
Was it in his butt?
It was in his crack.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's what they've been meaning when they say that?
Yeah, it's in his butt.
No.
In his crack?
Well, Richard hashed it?
I don't think that's a euphemism. Yeah.
No, it's in his crack. Yeah.
What?
That's why he was so uptight,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Simon's like walking around.
It's kind of like a waddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so that
maybe that's the thing that
maybe that's the controversial thing. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna go into a whole different tangent. So
I wonder what it was.
I'll text Chappell about it after. Okay,
yeah.
But
not me. Thank you. I think you really know your podcast.
It's for the best. It's for the okay. So then when like Simon's like, JLP, we come here and you ask us questions. Well, I got a question for you. What the heck did I find out there?
Firstly, how dare you?
Yeah. I put this thing in my butt, and then and it's nothing. And it's nothing. And so and JLP said, well, all right, well, I can give you some answers. And what you found was a clue to the idol. And I couldn't believe that they were so forthcoming with information.
Yeah, Jeff wouldn't have said anything, and
But
but
that would
I
never been in the
been like,
show.
yeah.
tell me how your butt is like Survivor.
Right. Your crack specifically.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Well,
how do ass
Jeff,
cookies
when you're out here,
compare?
sometimes
Yeah.
there's two sides. And really what you're looking for is you're trying to find
the idol in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do appreciate though, no matter what version of Survivor you're watching, you still get these non-committal ass answers. I love it so much. It's like, so who do you think should be like, do you think it has a good feel for what the game right now? Who do you think is like one of the front runners? I think we all got it, Jeff. I think we all got it. It's fine. Jonathan is cool. Like I don't think there's any front runners here. I don't think there's any leaders on the show. I love it. I love it. Keep him and hawing. But I do appreciate that he will ask the pointed questions that it seemed like Jeff used to do. Jeff used to go back and forth with the contestants a little bit more on television. Now he's just kind of like, as a meat salesman. What do you do with that? So I don't know. I think that the more Survivor evolves, the more creative you have to be with those moments. But I do think if you get a host who is antagonizing them a bit or, pushing the envelope, then you get more exciting conversations.
Honestly, I think that Jeff is too much in his own head with some of this stuff with, and you hear about it with like talking about like the podcast about like, oh, we're going to talk about why Jeff sucks. And we're going to talk about what you're talking about me. Like, I think that I don't think JLP is concerned about like, oh, what are the fans saying about if I ask this person this question? I think that Jeff is I think he hears the criticism when people go back and watch certain seasons, like, oh, why was he picking on this person or picking on this person? I do think that he's very concerned about coming across as not being completely unbiased. And I think he does not want to have that perception that he's picking on anybody.
Well, JLP's never asked me why I don't like him, the same way that Jeff has had the conversations with you. JLP's
but probably
to
he doesn't care if you like him or not, with all due respect.
I like to think that he's less tied to the product than Jeff is, obviously, as like a producer on the show and as like the face of what Survivor's always been. Like JLP, like he goes there, he gets his check, he's fun, he makes like really sexual innuendos, and then he's out. I think that that might be good. Like I'm not in terms of specifically Jeff, but like that separation is something that's probably been spoken about. So yeah, I mean, maybe something to ask Jeff. He's going to take listener questions, right, on his new podcast, and we can ask him if he watched episode 7 of the season of Australia. Maybe he got into it too through that. I'm gonna keep hearing about it. Like maybe he's watching some, and maybe he'll take something. Swaps are really fun. Weren't we doing that? Where did they get that?
JLP hasn't had to deal with 20 years of criticism that Jeff has had to deal with too.
Sure.
So Jeff has heard everything from Jeff doesn't like women, Jeff doesn't like black people, Jeff don't like gay people, Jeff barely like white men. Jeff.
Well, no one said that ever.
Jeff likes Colby. Okay, that for like the first 10 years, that's all we got.
He loves Andrew Savage.
We got Savage. But you get that Jeff has been picked on a little bit, and not to say like he didn't have a platform to where people should be, critical of what he's doing. But he did that for so long that I feel like he touched the hot stove too many times, and now he's afraid to kind of step back out there.
And on a human level, I think all three of us can relate to that, because I think that all three of us, as being like in like somewhat of a public eye, not nearly to like a millionth of the degree of a Jeff Probst, but that there are criticisms that we all get, maybe Chappell less so, and that they're annoying to deal with, especially when people will repeat the same thing that you disagree with, and there is a temptation to be like, hey, like I don't think that and you want to defend yourself, certainly.
Yeah, no, I actually think about this with Jeff all the time, because he does get a lot, and I feel like on the human level, then you can't like pass out like the fair criticisms that aren't being mean, but like being like accurate. Like, let's actually listen to this from like the hate and what might feel like vitriol, or just like the excessive amount of it. So you just like kind of put up a wall to it, and then you make a segment of your podcast called Why Jeff Sucks. So I kind of get it on that human level for Jeff, but like some of it's being missed. But this is really the AU versus US podcast now. I kind of love that it found its niche. It naturally
Post-show recap started the versus podcast, and now we're keeping it going. Okay, we've adopted the format.
Cool.
I want to talk about one of the tribal councils that I feel like got the least attention this week. And that was the one that the heroes went to ultimately, where Ben went out. And I thought it was such an interesting spot here where Flick got the idol from the supervillains and had a chance to play it, and ultimately played it for Matthew? Is that
Matt.
his name? Matt. Okay.
Maybe Matthew.
But it was such an interesting spot where George has the offer. Okay, I have an offer for you, Flick. Take your idol and throw it in the fire. And this
I don't think Omer and I even touched on this in 4 hours. Actually.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Take your idol and throw it into the fire. And like, wow, this is like the perfect crime of Simon had this idol that was a counterfeit idol and passed it off to Flick, who doesn't know that it's counterfeit. And she has an opportunity to go and actually spend this counterfeit currency with George in a way that if George is an honest broker, and I'd love to talk about if he is or if he isn't, but she could have actually made this deal with counterfeit money and nobody would have ever been the wiser. Simon would have thought he really spent his idol. Sean would have thought he really gave up the idol. That Flick would have thought she really burnt the idol. George would have thought, wow, Flick. I mean, I can't believe it. She gave up her idol. And everybody would have been snookered by this counterfeit money.
Yeah, that would have been hilarious. Imagine if the journey ended there. Like to pass from like all those things as we spoke about the journey to go into the fire so no one ever knew. It would have been frustrating probably as a viewer for that never to come out, but also so funny that would have been amazing. But you ask if George is an honest broker. In my professional opinion, if she puts that idol in the fire, Flick is going home tonight. It's not saving her for even this one tribal council. It's not even like, thank you, Flick, we'll just vote out even Matt. To say that you are going home right now. That's George versus Sean. Sean buries his whole game and swearing on his kids to not sacrifice Simon for it. That's Sean's word. George is like, hello, Scorpion and Frog, have you met me? Like, Flick is out the door in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's bad. And I think from Flick's point of view, like, I think the argument does have a little bit of merit. Because again, if you play conservatively, you will always be at the bottom, right? So you really do have to take a big swing and hope that you can ingratiate yourself with the powers that be. But I would never want to be on somebody's highlight reel of like the best moves ever made and stuff like that. And could you imagine how many times that clip would be shown of George being like, why don't you just throw it in the fire? And Flick being like, okay. And then going home. Absolutely not. You will have to murder me first. It's not happening. Because these clips get replayed and now they're getting replayed on international seasons. We should not still, in season 43, be talking about Eric Reichenbach. But we are, and that's no disrespect to him, but dear God, he made one mistake. And it's like, it followed him for the rest of his life. Flick, if you throw that into the fire, you are a joke. And not to say that like I don't take you seriously. I'm saying that people will make you the butt of a joke for a very long time.
100%. If she throws it in the fire, Shawnee's going up to the voting confessional and saying, you are going down as the dumbest Survivor player ever. In Survivor, ever. And George is talking about how you can't always beat him with this, but you can always beat him with, like, literally, that is 100%, because that's George.
One by one.
Literally. And we'll see it all. We'll see who would Jerry be in this situation.
It just was so interesting to me that this deal could have potentially been made. Again, it probably wasn't a real deal, but it could have almost been had with this fake idol, this counterfeit money. I thought that was really, really interesting, and I thought that that and JLP at the end says like hey, it's like you could have a fake idol or an honest deal, and so.
Well, with George, the second one's the boys. George and Flick have played together. I think it's with their final 3 tribal council the last season, 13 tribal councils, and voted together in honesty one time. One time. That is insane to still be in the game together for so long, through 2 seasons now, and to be on such different pages. Like, she has no trust with George for years, and like, I think rightfully so.
Something else that I'm loving about Australian Survivor, and I don't know if JLP has always done this or has just started it this season, but he has adopted calling the immunity idol your ace. And he's talking about play. Hey, look, if you got an ace, you got to play your ace. You got to play. Yeah, you can't. Don't leave without playing your ace. I love that. I love calling the hidden immunity idol your ace.
See, I didn't pick up on it that it had been happening all season. I thought this was just a Jordy reference because Jordy is the Joker. So I thought it was like ace, Joker, king, queen. Because he's like, you got to play your ace. And in that case, the Joker is the one who went home. I was like, oh, it's a card thing. But I don't know. I've heard too many kings and queens. I mean, we do have them in this season. King George, Queen Haley. It's a thing. So maybe it's just something for this run. But to go back to what you were saying about George, though, Shannon, if Flick throws that into the fire, couldn't you just see George going, "I'm a villain"? You know, like he's on the villain tribe. He's on the villain tribe for a reason.
Put it on a
100%.
silver platter for him. Yeah.
Well, that's another parallel. I think people have seen like George is like the Russell, and then you've got like the Pav and Danielle in Shawnee and Liz. So 100%, like George is like literally. I think it would literally be like, "Have you met me? Are you joking right now, Flick?" Like, yeah, I think, and that's why I feel like that never had any legs. But you kind of love how George will put it out there and be like, maybe. And to Flick's credit, I think guess it's a small credit, but I'm glad she didn't burn even the fake idol. Because then would it still be the dumbest move of all time when the idol wasn't real? No, but then the implicit immunity of the idol saved her. So yeah, it actually really would. She literally gets saved for that.
Yeah.
And then would go home. So yeah.
Shannon, I was worried about Stevie at the Tribal Council. I really kind of thought, especially when George starts talking to Flick, I'm like, we talked about like the Christie situation when we spoke last week, right? But this was, or the week that I was on Survivor Global. But I was like, oh, I'm really worried for Stevie, especially when he's like, wait, I don't like, what am I doing? Like, why don't we split the vote? And like, Stevie, give us an answer. What are you doing? Why go get water later? That was hilarious. Going back and forth and back and forth. I really did say, the only thing that I felt like, okay, well, I was like, I feel like I would have been getting mentions if he got voted out here.
Right, from the swing vote. Yeah, George has had to manage allies in the past, like an ally who where they said cooked a split vote so badly she sent someone home by accident, literally by accident, by putting down the wrong name. And so George is used to managing difficult allies. Like I think that's what it is with Stevie. He did have that confessional where they said, they're like, you could tell they've asked the question, like, why would you vote for George? He's like, why would I vote for George? Because I think he's the kind of guy who walks into a bar and you want to punch him in the face or something. No one asked you to go that hard, Stevie. And then he'd have to fix his face and it would be a lot. But I kind of just think Stevie's just like, again, like having had like minor interactions with him, like just kind of a vague, kind of weird guy. You just have to know that and you just have to manage it. Like, I didn't think he was ever out the door. I just think Stevie's a little all over the place.
Yeah, you see him trying to manage. You see George trying to manage Stevie here, and I just think to all the seasons of Survivor that we've seen prior to this, and just imagine like some of the greatest players of all time trying to rope in some of these like external players, like Jeremy trying to talk to Keith Nail that one time. He's like, Keith, what the hell? You know, like just that makes me laugh. Like the moments where you're like, this person has no business on this game. They're not paying attention, but meanwhile, your greatest player, you know, is trying to like really be like picture Sari talking to Courtney, you know, and Courtney's like, what? I just want to be on the beach. And so he's like, girl, we got to vote him out. You know, like, oh man, I want more of that. I want more of the scenes of someone who is tapped into the game, really dealing with somebody who is just a complete, like, you know, this unknown when it comes to the game. Because Stevie's saying, yeah, I don't want to talk strategy. I really want to get some water. That almost fell into the floor. Yeah, that was so funny.
George said, Stevie, you could get water later. Come on.
He was like, God, I guess. Like, but I'm thirsty. You know, like, I love that.
It's an underrated skill. Yeah, you're completely right in terms of trying to manage these like rogue elements. Not rogue. I'm so sorry, Chappell.
Oh yeah, it is Black History Month. We can't get into rogue grouping.
The third episode this week ultimately was the one that ends in the non-elimination. Ultimately, where let's talk about that. Where Haley was saved by the bell here, and ultimately we get Liz mutinying to be back with George and Shawnee on the heroes. And Shannon, I know that you talked about this on the podcast with Omer, but I know that this is a question here about does Australian Survivor save its stars?
You tell me, Chappell. You said you watched till Sandra went out. Where was the sign? Where was the sign saying go to the other camp?
Where was it? They don't respect her anymore. But I do think there's something to like think about right there, right? Because we know that Haley is a fan favorite. Like, I barely know Australian Survivor, but I know that much. And so I'm just like, okay, I was worried about Haley. And of all the characters, she's not the biggest character this season. So I've been really trying to like get into the headspace like where I'm like completely invested in Haley's story. But even right here, I was like, I was worried. And then oh wait, it's a mutiny. Oh, no elimination. Like, okay, I kind of see what you're doing here. But again, this is stuff that worked in like Survivor proper, right? U.S. Survivor. The mutiny at Cook Islands is the reason why the season works. It was the potential to be a disaster, racist ass season, and really by allowing Candace to just like half-assedly jump around and drag Penner with her, it made a compelling show.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to take the elements that worked and just throw them into Australian Survivor and see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, I like the mutiny being there. I thought Omer had some really good thoughts on that. Shannon, okay, since this is officially now the AU versus US podcast, I would love to just talk through a little bit about if there was this type of non-elimination, a player just ends up getting saved by a swap ending to a tribal council. I think the American audience would lose its mind.
Yes, they would, and they did. And I think that's something that I wanted to talk about this week, because I think I was quite surprised how angry people were about the non-elim. And my thoughts on the non-elims, I would much prefer there were no non-elims. I love Haley so much. She's a good friend. She's an amazing player. I'm happy for her that she's still in the game. I'm happy for me that she's there, but I would always choose no non-elim over a non-elim. I want the game to be as pure as possible, but we've had non-elims in Australian Survivor since the very first season. In fact, none of us would probably be here having this conversation if not. Nick was saved in episode 4. He went on to have a big run in that season, and he you and Steven and Nick, Rob, and you created this for us even now to have this coverage. So I was also very grateful for that. But the non-elims are this like impure part of the game that have always been there. But I think what I saw this week was a lot of really new people to the show being like, what? Even though we've already had obviously the one with Jerry, but this was going to be such a big blindside on Haley, who's such a big player, by Nina, who obviously a lot of those, especially new fans of US Survivor, are rooting for because of the Sandra connection. And I think a lot of people were like, what is this producer intervention at all, let alone for even the fact that, like, as a non-elim, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, Shannon, okay, well, look, maybe in Australia you have these kinds of problems, but here in America, when we have votes, we don't have any problems with them. Nobody is ever saying things are rigged or anything like that. So it's all running pretty smoothly over here.
Are people saying it's rigged in the US? I can't think of what you're like slightly referring to right now.
Stuff happens. I just went in. Let's say specifically. Yes. Yeah. What happened?
When we want to save our stars, we just put them on edge of extinction. Literally, and we
change the format of the show.
About it. Right. But can I actually qualify here in terms, because I know I said it on the recap, but I just wanted to. So non-elims are a part of the show because we have to, because of the episode order.
Sure.
24 episodes. There's only 24 people. They don't want bigger cast because they're already purpling many of them. So we have to have non-elims. And I thought this was a fine non-elim. They told them before the vote. For the people that are angry and haven't seen more, other times you get told after they've actually voted. They walk down the path.
Yeah.
And they have a sign saying, go to the other camp, you're still in the game. Go to an Exile Island, you're still in the game. So, I
don't think that there was any foul play here with saving Haley, because I feel like they don't need it. I mean, this isn't like a season where all their big stars have gone out, where it's like, boy, if we lose Haley here.
We've already lost George, we've already lost Simon, we're stuck with Fraser.
Right.
And exactly,
we've lost one returning player other than the medical evacuation of Jackie. Every other person has gone out as a first timer, and we're on episode 12.
Yeah.
So I don't think you needed to do that. And so, look, I podcast The Amazing Race. People say it happens. Yeah, Chappell, even this past season on Big Brother, when Paloma, remember that when she went out of the house and they didn't do the eviction and Taylor got saved, and people were complaining about that. So people can't handle it when this happens, but I don't think that there was any foul play.
Yeah, that's a great point. 100%.
No, and I just went and looked. The last non-elimination was on day 22 roughly, and this is day 25. So it's around the same time. Exactly. So it's like you can't even be completely shocked.
That's what so statistically, like, I was for a second I was like, Haley, and then I was like, there'll be a non-elim, because last time it was in week 4, we similarly had a medevac. And we're probably going to want to go to a final 3. Very, very similar structure. We've only had one so far. We're going to need more. We had a mutiny right before the merge in 2017. The timing is not suspicious even remotely. The only thing that's suspicious is that Haley is a big name. And I agree with you, Rob. They don't rig for big names. They haven't in the past. I was talking about this on the recap, but Sandra, That was the one. That cast needed
That's
Sandra
the one.
so badly. Like she was kind of started like a tide, and then Nina got medevac. That was unfortunate. But the reverence that they had for Sandra, they brought her in on a helicopter while everyone waited down below.
Yeah.
And if they didn't save her, I actually thought the conversation was over then. I remember being like, can we never talk about this again? Because if they weren't willing to put a sign down for Sandra, then this is clearly not rigged. But eventually a big name might get saved by a non-elim. And for Haley, she gets it a lot because she had a non-elim in her first season. She was completely twist screwed and then went through a non-elim, which I've always thought just corrected that wrong. But then they said Rogue is there to rig it for Haley so that she has like some fodder. The Jerry one rigged it for Haley, even though Ben was going like, I think because she's such a big name and because her win is contentious in that way against George as well. She just like kind of drives it. And then I also think that this new kind of fan base who've all gotten into it because of how good the season is, and a lot also for Nina, were like, is this a thing that producers stepped in? But we have non-elims. We've had them since the dawn of Australian Survivor. This is not a suspicious time. This to me was not, I don't believe it's rigged. Like because that was such a big talking point this week. And I was surprised that people were so upset by it when I was like, it's also a fine non-elim based on the fact that they get told before the vote. And it was quite an interesting mechanism in the mutiny. And like it's totally unfair for Nina and for her group and it would have been an amazing blindside, but also that's Australian Survivor. And like we all accepted it a very long time ago.
Well, look, I think that shenanigans were happening, just not for who people think they were happening for.
Oh,
people say that this was rigged for Haley, but from what I understand and the little knowledge I have about this show, Shani, let's talk about it. Shani is, from what I can understand, is a multiple-time player, universally beloved, a triple threat.
This is the thing that will go viral. Australian Survivor is rigged for Shani. That's what's going to go viral.
But look, you just took her number one and put them on a different tribe. You basically Boston robbed and ambered her. And now you're saying you get the chance to mutiny and go back to your number one and your number two. Liv, what do you want to do? She's like, I guess I'll go play with Shani now. Oopsie. And now Shani's like, yeah, I'm building my army. If Shani wins this one, I might plant my
Liz was fine. Like, to Liz's credit, like Liz is not out the door. I mean, she has an idol. No, she's in a majority. Liz is just fine. Like she like they're connected. They're both in great spots. Like they're connecting out of merge.
Now they're together, Shannon. They're together.
For how long? Like there are literally promos being like merge week. So it's happening probably not next episode, but pretty soon. Like they're gonna get a couple of days to chat, and like good for them to be able to like get their best friend back for like
Look,
how long?
Once Jordy burned her idol, they were like, what are we going to do to get Shani's power back? Let's give her a number one. I'm just saying, it's right there. I would rig it for Shani. In the little bit of time that I spent watching this show, I would rig a game for Shani. That feels right.
Yeah. Can Australian Survivor sometimes rig things? I think yes. The auction last season, I was like, all right, like someone on the bottom found like a note that like, we'll tell you what you get later. And because they were on the bottom, it was like, you get everything. You get to send everyone out of tribal council. I was like, what the hell? But so I'm not saying it's a totally pure show. Like, I think there's a very big reality TV element compared to like the US and definitely to Survivor South Africa, which I think is way more pure. But the non-elims, this is what I said on the recap. If they're rigging it, they're horrible at it. Give me my Sandra.
Yeah,
okay. Why didn't they rig it for Sandra? We all would have been fine with it. No one would have complained. Not one person.
I mean, Russell would have, but I mean,
why didn't they rig it for Russell? They also like they didn't do any of these things. And yeah, Haley's great, and she's the face of the franchise, but she's not delivering enough to this season comparatively to like what that blindside would have been. That would have been epic, and it would have like elevated Nina, who in herself is a huge name. So they would have lost.
I loved the storyline of her legacy of her. Okay, that she is now, she is the daughter of a survivor. She was on the heroes, but now she's on the villains in Samoa. That it's just like such a like rich earned story, and I'm happy to see her coming into her own because it had been a little purple so far for the first 3 weeks for Nina. So I thought this was a good breakout week for her in this game. Shannon, what else should we check in about while we have you here?
I mean, I think that's it. I think Nina, people were excited for Nina in terms of like the international audience because we all love her so much. And I think that this was, despite the non-elim, kind of ruining that, and that might come back on her. It was nice to see because she's my winner pick. And I was like, not a great edit, but I kind of feel like now that she's had a bit of like the coming out story, like I still think that she could win just based on her edit. So it was cool to see that come through, and for Sam not to be sacrificed there because he's clearly a key ally for her. So I think that it was a pretty good week for Nina.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was rooting for Nina just because we know this is our family at this point. But if she wins this game, I'm going to be very upset because, and for the same reason I would be upset if when Sandra won Heroes versus Villains, it's like you give this person their winner edit, give them the edit they deserve. I understand.
Right. That would be great though.
Yeah,
let her be a little purple like her mom was.
Yeah, now see that's where I saw the symmetry. I'm like, you two are on Samoa not getting any confessionals. Like it comes full circle. It might be genetic, but in my mind,
she's gonna come back for Australian Game Changers though, and she's gonna really let them have it.
Yeah,
well, she hasn't won yet, so maybe if she comes back for Game Changers, it'll switch up. You know what I'm saying? There's something there, but yeah, I just think that like you should give your winner the flowers that they deserve, and maybe she does win, and she just hasn't done anything yet for them to highlight. But right now, it's not looking great for the edit.
It's true. Australian Survivor usually also is excessive. Like again, as you can tell, we're not very subtle here in Australia. We're not. So it probably would be quite extreme. But the winner confessional that I feel she just got was extreme. Does it make up for like almost a dozen episodes of purpleness? Maybe not. But it went quite a far way. Like in that one confessional, they packed in how like, it's like basically her birthright. They talked about her Medivac. They showed clips of it. It was like Sandra again. Like I feel like they were like, okay, we just want to remind you about everything right now. So just because that was a lot, I thought that it went a far way. But the edit before that was a bit concerning.
Okay. Shannon, I have loved doing these check-ins these last couple of weeks. I want to keep it going, even into U.S. Survivor
How we
season.
do it, Rob? When?
How,
where? Who? Why? No,
that Sam Moore asked me these questions earlier, and I said to him, like, hey.
Work it out. It's your job to work
you figure it out. Okay, that's why you're the best in the business. Figure it out. Okay.
Let's
all right.
Do it.
Yeah,
I would like to return for one of those if you're just gonna keep going.
Keep going.
I love a good conversation. Tag me in.
Yes, this wasn't 6 hours though. We need to be able to do 6 check-ins at 6 hours.
Okay.
And so many people are watching.
And you got to come on Nothing But Netflix with us.
Yes, Survivor's on
not
Netflix
invited.
now, Shannon.
Well, Chappell, he says I keep Australia from him. He keeps Netflix from me. He won't even let me have a Netflix account. I can't watch anything on Netflix. It's so unfair.
Chappell,
I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. Not sorry at all. But I would love for you to come on. We haven't talked since America's Next Top Model. So
what about the drafts? All the many drafts.
The drafts don't count. That's like
why?
That doesn't count as a
U.S.
podcast.
Survivor draft is going to be live on Monday night.
Yes.
7 Eastern.
Are you shaking in your boots?
For why?
Kill you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I'm so worried.
I will destroy you. Glory or death.
Yeah.
And maybe as we've talked about how great this Australian Survivor season, maybe U.S. Survivor is feeling the pressure because I feel like there's a lot of buzz about how Jeff is saying, it's a really great season coming up, season 44.
I don't want to do 2 great seasons at the same time.
It's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have.
First world problem. Yep.
Rob, you're going to keep watching this even with the busyness of Survivor 44. You're in?
Yes, I am in.
You're in now.
I am in.
You're in the whole season?
We're doing the whole season. How about that?
Oh my God.
Okay. What about
Thank
the swear
you,
on? We came. What am I gonna do? Stop watching with like 2 weeks left?
I've done it before. Wait, 2 weeks.
Many weeks. There's so many episodes left. No,
Yeah.
barely on the home stretch.
We're doing the damn thing.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll find the time.
All right.
I love being in the room for something like this. Like,
I gotta see how it works. Now, hold on. Now, get back to me. If all right, now next week, George is voted out and Shawnee is voted out, and
you're in it while it's good.
While it's good, I'm in it while the going is good. Okay.
Yeah. Fair weather Australian.
Right.
Survivor
if we
fan
have
who says it's the best ever, then taps out immediately when it's not.
Well, if it gets bad.
Yeah.
Just because your faves go home does not mean it's bad, Rob. I'm sure.
This is why they need to save your faves. This is why they need to rig it for Rob. Rob's like, if George goes home, I'm out. They're like, oh my God, let's rig it for George. Make sure you never go so.
I did enjoy the Traders US a whole lot. And I'm not saying it was rigged, but I'm happy with the outcome no matter how it happened. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Rigging is good when it suits me.
Exactly. Okay. Shenanigans.
No, please don't quote that. Please quote that out of context.
Viral.
Okay. All right. So we are going to start to wrap this up. But let me start with Chappell. Chappell, what's coming up for you?
I have a lot. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Season 6 of Snowfall has just started. And so Snowfall on FX is the final season, and Mari, Latanya, and I will be covering it on our podcast. It's basically just where we're gonna go in and recap Snowfall. So you can do Snowfall, a post-show recap, wherever you get your podcasts, or our own feed that we're working on, TBD, Season 2 of Abbott Elementary is in full swing. Myself and Gia every other week are talking about Abbott Elementary, and so you can subscribe to Abbott Elementary, a post-show recap to keep up with those. Season 2 of Bel Air is back this week, and Puya and I will be back to talk about Bel Air on Peacock, and so you can look for Bel Air, a post-show recap for that. Also, it's going to be 3 episodes, I think, dropped in bulk. And so Puya and I are going to be recording 3 episodes back to back. And so that will be entertaining. But check that out if you want to hear me very tired on the podcast. I think we'll do our first recording tomorrow. Also, Ariel and I will be on post-show recap talking about Grey's Anatomy. Our Grey's Anatomy series is called Grey's Anatomy's Anatomy. And this is just to talk about, well, for one, Ellen Pompeo's last season with Grey's Anatomy as a season regular and all the shenanigans that led her to that point. And then we're going to go talk about some other characters and kind of keep up and keep tabs with season 19, as this is the 19th season of Grey's. Also, I'm on Silent Podcast talking about Big Brother next week, Big Brother 6 to be exact. They're going back in time in the past to talk about these older seasons of Big Brother. Isaiah's been working his way backwards, and I will be talking about my favorite season, which is season 6. Well, one of my favorite seasons, which is season 6. I also was on Silent Podcast talking about Kang the Conqueror and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So that was a good time. My frat brother Gabe joined me as my special guest. So check out Silent Podcast for that at silent_podcast on Twitter if you want to keep up with those things. And then here on RHAP, of course, we have Nothing But Netflix. Rob, you and I were just joined by Grace Leader to talk about the PGA tournament and review the first. Yeah, to review the first 2 episodes of the Netflix series Full Swing. So the next episode should be over the Netflix movie We Have a Ghost, starring Anthony Mackie, which I believe for patrons, there's like a little something for y'all coming up as well. So check that out too. Also on Rob Has a Podcast. Today we're playing Jackbox games. And so by the time this is released, people should have heard or seen us playing Jackbox games on twitch.tv/RHAP. I also was on the 90 Day Fiance podcast this week with Puya.
Oh my God.
How do you have time for Australian Survivor? How are you watching this? Are you podcast?
He doesn't
you
sleep.
just have it in a screen on this corner?
I don't listen. I'm not done with my plugs. I'm never gonna finish you.
Don't ask the bird how it flies, Shannon.
Right? Yeah. Some things you just do, But yeah, so that's the majority of the things that I'm working on, and so you can follow me on Twitter at Chappell's_show for more updates on everything else.
Okay. All right. There you go. Shannon.
Chappell, are you gonna finish the season?
I'll watch as long as Rob's watching.
Okay.
Watch while it's good. Save George.
Okay. Yeah, save George.
Good.
All right. By the way, met King George at the finale for this last thing. He was amazing. He was a great guy. I'm rooting for him 100%.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
All right. Shannon, of course, for you, Survivor Global, Talking Tribal, what else?
Exits, Draft, Killing Chappell, Jackbox games. I'm doing that too. What time are you, Chappell? Are you in now? Or
I don't think
are you on the one in 8 minutes or the one in an hour and 8 minutes?
I really don't know, but I'm hoping Sam put me on the one in 8 minutes. We'll see.
Okay, well, I'm after that. But anyway, Chappell's in 8 minutes. All right, well, then see you at the draft, Chappell. Yeah, the Survivor Global, I'm going to be covering US Survivor as well. And then it's just the Australian Survivor, the recaps, this Australian versus US podcast that Rob and I are doing weekly, apparently every week until Rob falls off, which is great. I'm really excited about it. How fun. I just feel like what a great way to spend my birthday, just endlessly making content about a really, really fun season of Survivor. And that's been the birthday week, and I have no regrets.
And if you want to give Shannon Guss the gift that keeps on giving, go to robinswebsite.com/global feed. Leave her a 5-star review and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us here as we talked through another week of Australian Survivor. We will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.